Welcome to the Inspiring Victory Show, where we help you double your business, double your impact, and change the world. We are very, very fortunate. Today, we have Bruce Cazenave, who is world-renowned in many, many circles, both in the US and all throughout Europe. You may have already heard of him. And he was known for going into companies like Nautilus and Timberland and Black+Decker and doing massive expansion in all through Europe and all through the US and all over the world globally. And now does consulting projects and goes into companies and helps them expand literally all over the world. So welcome to the show. Thank you for being here, Bruce. It's always nice to see you.
Thank you, Sarah. Likewise.
Thank you. You have gone into all of these different companies, and I know you inherited a lot of challenges whenever you did go into them. I'm wondering, how did you prepare to be able to go into these different environments? What prepared you to be able to go in and turn those companies or divisions and then companies around and put them onto that growth trajectory?
Well, I think it's a little bit two-part. One part is, ability to diagnose kind of what the situation is, what the opportunities are, identify the growth drivers, to accelerate growth and so forth. So that comes along with having done it a number of times. But I think the other thing, because I've moved around to do turnarounds and building companies, it goes back to when I was raised. I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, but left when I was 6 years old. My dad was in the Foreign Service. And we traveled throughout Latin America. Every 2 years, we were in a different country and come back every 2 years for a summer and then go to a different country. So Brazil, Dominican Republic, Panama, Paraguay, Peru. And so I think every time I didn't realize it at the time, but I kind of had to adapt to the different cultures. Fortunately, everybody other than Brazil spoke Spanish. So, I kind of picked up that along the way. Well, but, every time I moved, it was a different, make new friends, new school, new everything. And I probably didn't realize that that's something that helped me in my professional career years later, moving from company to company and assimilating very easily into different cultures, different industries, and so forth. So that's a little bit, I'd say, of how I got to where, I feel like I'm somewhat successful in doing that.
Very successful in doing that for some really big companies and still going in and doing that for some even larger, companies all the time. Well, when you inherited those different kinds of challenges, what was the first thing that you would do in order to turn things around and get them back on a growth path?
That's a great question. I would say that there's no cookbook because every company was different. Timberland different than Nautilus, different than Central Garden Pet, and so forth. And the way that it was the best way I found to determine early on what to do differently, particularly with distressed companies that needed to get back their legs under them, if you will, and grow, was talking to the employees. In many cases, the company, at the time I would come in, the employees were maybe demoralized because sales were down, profits, losing money, maybe hanging on to be on the stock exchange because market cap was so low and so forth. And so, but they always had great ideas in terms of what the obstacles were, what we could do better, all that kind of stuff. So normally what I would do, Sarah, is the first 2 or 3 months of joining a company, I would spend breakfast, lunch, and dinners one-on-one with a lot of people, senior management and down the ranks, and just ask them, okay, what do we do well? What could we do differently? What do you think we should do? Blah, blah, blah. Besides getting to know them on a personal basis and triangulating what I was hearing, listening, big ears. I always say I have big ears, listening to what they're saying, and then triangulating kind of what the plan would be going forward. And so I would say the answers were in the company. It's just that the prior management and ownership of the company, whatever it was not unlocking that potential, not tapping into that for whatever reason. So that's kind of what I would say. The other thing I would say is that you have to move with some urgency, because if we didn't have a plan, or at least the beginnings of a plan in the first 6 months I was there, then you start to have the employees wondering, well, why is this person here? He's not really changing anything or something, you know? So it's, you have the benefit of people looking at you and saying, this gentleman's going to help us, you know, find our way and really go after growth. So that's good. On the other hand, you can't just be slow about it. You got to figure out what's the best thing to do. And in some cases, if it's not the right thing, part of a strategy, then you exit it or adjust it. And that's how that worked 5 or 6 times really well. And then typically within 18 months, the company's got, you know, starting to, you know, become profitable again, and then growing, and then layering on more and more growth. So I hope that answers your question, but that's kind of it's not a cookbook. It's basically customized to individual situations, and by talking to the employees and formulating what to do.
Those are some great questions to ask, though, of one's employees. And I think it's pretty easy to step away from what's really going on and have the vision of where you want to go without tying it to the people that are really doing it. So what I'm hearing is, yeah, there's not a cookbook, as you say, there's not a formula. And what there is, though, is asking the real people that are there, where are our opportunities, and then, like you said, triangulating those. That was brilliant.
Yeah.
So what can small to medium-sized businesses, you know, the ones that are out there, what can they do to use the same kind of questioning technique with their own team? If they have a team that's maybe smaller than hundreds of thousands of people, if they've got, you know, 50 or 100 or 200 or 500 people or 1,000, would the same questions be relevant? And do you ask everybody? I mean, how would you go about finding out where growth is if you're looking for that path to growth? Who do you ask, and what questions do you ask if it's a smaller company?
If it's a small to medium size, I would say it's actually better because you can actually talk and get to know more people. Like even at Nautilus, we had 450 people globally, and I probably knew on a first name basis at least 350 of them. Okay, over the 8 years I was there, knew their significant others' names, knew their pets' names, and that's how you establish the relationship. So I would say, no matter what the size of the company is, Sarah, there's certain things that are truisms throughout those sizes. Okay, and whatever type of product or service that company is doing too, I would say it passes. It's translatable into these other things, and that is, have a mission. Okay, what is the mission of the company? Why does it exist? And ideally, it's something that resonates with the employee base. That just gives you extra adrenaline to do the things you might need to do, maybe grow faster or change something or turn around and so forth. And then communicate that mission a lot, consistently in town halls that you have every quarter, whatever it is, communicate that mission. And ideally, when you have a smaller company, you can actually break it down to, what does that mean to me as an employee? How do I plug into what the company is trying to do and what our overall mission is? You get larger companies and you have multiple facilities now, warehouses or plants or offices around the world, or even in the US, just in the US. You then have to think about, how do you communicate effectively to all of those people? And that technology today allows you to do that. You know, whether it's Zoom calls, town halls, you can do those kinds of things. You still, the in-person is the best. And then you get larger, more employees. That's a little more difficult to do. But, you know, at Blue Stem, we had, 3,000 employees, and we had all kinds of locations, like 12 different locations. And I'd make a point to be at least at once a year, if not twice a year, besides the headquarters, a lot, be at all those facilities. So I'd say, have a mission, make it very clear, and ideally it's something that resonates with the employees, and then tell them how they can plug into helping the company achieve that. And if you can get your employees, no matter if it's 5 or if it's 3,000, you can get them coming to work every morning, really feeling good and proud about what product or service you're bringing to the marketplace, or satisfying customers, or helping your customers achieve their goals, then you get energy, you know, and they come to work in the morning, they're thinking of new ways to improve how they work with their other employees and how they can help the company. So that's kind of what I would say is probably the biggest thing. We can talk about other things about talent, recruiting talent, retaining talent, some of those kinds of things as well. But this starts with having a mission, having it resonate with the employees ideally, and then communicating it and establishing that personal connection.
Oh, definitely, definitely. It's interesting. I see a lot of people that feel as though they need to have a company mission and they come up with these very long mission statements that nobody actually reads. I don't know if I have told you this story, but I once went into a company to consult, and there was a couple of guys and a gal at the front reception area. And when I walked up, their mission statement was so long and it took up the entire back wall behind them. And I said, "Wow, that's a lot. You guys must be very proud of your mission statement." All three of them looked at me and said, "What mission statement?" They were literally, and they weren't new. It felt like wallpaper to them behind them because it wasn't connected to them. So, my concern is always when working with companies, how would you recommend that a company like that, where they have a mission, they have a mission statement, no one gets it. That's that communication thing you talked about. How do you create one that people are actually engaged with or excited about, and that actually has meaning and isn't wallpaper? And how do you keep communicating that? And the important part you told me about was, and then how do you connect it to the people who are really doing the jobs in there? So could you break that down into how did you really do that, and how did you really communicate that, and then how did you connect it to real people? That's what fascinates me.
Well, I think the best example of that is probably Dorel. Okay, Dorel was, and it still is, the largest juvenile products company in the world. Okay. And I was the CEO of that company, and based in Columbus, Indiana. And again, troubled company at the time, losing money, had a huge factory right there in Columbus of 1 million square feet and over 1,000 employees there, and quality problems, cost problems, recalls. When you think about having a recall on an infant car seat, Sarah, that's a problem. People putting their kids in those seats, right? And you have to recall them. That's not good. So I think in this case, it was kind of under the covers what the mission should be. So I did my usual, like I was saying, the first 90 days talking to people and so forth like that. I spent some time on the phones talking to customers over the phone on, problems or inquiries on product and so forth. We were making strollers, and, Safety First was our brand. If you remember the Safety First brand, Baby on Board, all that kind of stuff. It was.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes.
Very popular. And so through the customer service interaction I had, I asked them, okay, what feedback are we getting? He said, well, we get these letters from parents and kids that are thank you letters, and they basically say, thank you for saving my life. And I said, well, where are they? And they're like in these cabinets. There's probably 20 cabinets, 4 drawers high, stacked with for years of these thank you letters that we were getting, and they're sitting in the cabinet. And I said, well, let's look at some of them. So we looked at some of them, and we were getting on average 3 or 4 a week, okay, because we were making 10 million car seats, besides the strollers and the play yards and the monitors and stuff like that. 10 million car seats going out the door every year. And so 3 or 4 a week we were getting these notes, and sometimes they'd have a picture, and the picture was a crunched up car, and I survived this because thanks to your car seat, and it could be a 3 or 4-year-old kid with help from their parents to write the note. So I said, well, we have this problem with the employees not feeling connected, not engaged. So what if we put these letters that we got at cards out in the factory? Okay, we'll create a bulletin board, and we'll put these things up and keep populating them with all the new ones that come up. So we had a board about 20 feet long, about 3 feet wide, and all of a sudden it became a central point for the employees in that factory. Again, there was over 1,000 of them. 1,200, I think. And they started to look at this, and they looked at it and say, well, wow, my work in this factory, whether I'm putting a strap or I'm taking something out of a mold, a plastic mold, or I'm putting the packaging together and the instructions or whatever manual, it's really important that I do this perfectly because it's going to end up potentially saving some kid's life, in an accident. And so guess what? They all of a sudden it was like, wow, what we do every day, the little things really make a difference. And to somebody, okay, and could make a life-saving difference. And so guess what? All of a sudden the employees started to feel better. The quality got better. The recalls went away. We didn't have that anymore. Costs got better because people were more interested in, okay, how do I make the factory operate more efficiently and so forth? And it just took a life of its own. We call it the Doral business system, and that was our mission, was to provide the best product we could to save people's kids' lives, or in the case of strollers and things like that, just to make the parents be able to enjoy the kids in a safety mode, but also enjoy them as much as they can. So that was it. And that was enough to click over people saying, oh, wow, I'm coming back to work. Where am I going to be today? Now it was like, hey, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to make the best car seat that ever came off the line every day, So that's the power of getting something that can be a mission statement and bringing it down. And we did everything on one page, Sarah. We had everything from a mission statement to the key strategies to the basic values of the company. One page. You could hand it out. You could do it. None of this big book stuff. It was all fit on one page. And not a big thing that nobody knew we even had a mission statement. It was very simple. 2 sentences probably. And that worked. It worked.
Well, and I love that it's in plain English that anybody can understand, especially since not everybody who works for you is necessarily coming to you as English is their first language, or or they may not have a doctorate or an MBA to be able to understand all the jargon that people put into these things. So I love that you connected it to something that was authentic and powerful, and then you did it in ways that were low tech, basically free, and made a big difference. And now that we have all these great technology devices, if you do have multiple factories, those are things that people can see in their inbox, or can be getting a text about, or can be seeing on WhatsApp or whatever that is, or you can show in a town hall on Zoom. So now we have even more techniques to do what you did, but how powerful that you were able to do that when you didn't have all these things that we now have, and make such a great impact. I am so incredibly honored to have you as a part of the Inspiring Victory tribe at the Inspiring Victory Show. Please do us a favor. We really need your help. Please like, subscribe, share, write a comment. It makes a huge difference with how many people we can reach here at the Inspiring Victory Show, and it makes a big difference to me personally. I want to make sure that we're providing content to as many people as we possibly can so they can grow and succeed. So we'd love to have you continue your membership here at the Inspiring Victory Show. It's free. Helping us out costs nothing, but it makes a huge difference in how many people we can help. So double your business, double your impact, and change the world. And thank you so much for being a part of this extraordinary community. Thank you. All right, I want to know what would you consider one of the most challenging situations you've ever had and to face, and what did you have to do to turn that around and get a positive result out of it? Because I know you've had some you walked into that were really, really difficult. So what comes to mind as one of the hardest?
I would say the hardest, and there have been a few, but the hardest one was probably when I joined Timberland in the mid 90s, and they were, really struggling and so forth, almost in bankruptcy, and started out in the U.S. The headquarters was in New Hampshire, and I moved from Baltimore to New Hampshire to turn around the U.S. business. That was the biggest part of the company at the time. And then after 2.5 years, they moved me to Europe to do the same thing, right? And so I went over to Europe. And the challenges there were, I was the only expat over there, and they had 5 subsidiaries that all Timberland subsidiaries, all owned by Timberland, spread geographically, mostly in Western Europe, not Eastern Europe, but had responsibility for Eastern. And they didn't work together. They were very disjointed, their own product line, their own warehouses, their own everything. Okay, spread out. In fact, one was Barcelona. There was another one in, of course, London, Munich, and so forth. And so what I found is that the best way, after traveling and talking, and like I do, finding the best way to grow that company, that unit within Timberland worldwide, was to create a pan-European centralized unit. Still keep sales and some finance and receivable accounting type people in each subsidiary, but bring some of the like supply chain operations, marketing into a central location, and then operate as one unit. Because before they were actually competing with each other, believe it or not, particularly on the borders between France and Spain, the Spanish subsidiary would go into France and the French subsidiary would go into Spain, try to sell product, right? Boots or clothing, apparel, luggage, etc. And so I had to break down all of that. And the first thing they said, well, you're going to build this central unit in London, in the UK, because that was the largest subsidiary of the five. And they said, the Brits are going to get all of the attention. They're going to get all the inventory. They're going to get what they want. We're going to have to follow their lead, blah, blah, blah. And so I said, no. I said, I'm going to bring people from all of the subsidiaries to London. So the best French talent is coming to London. The best German talent is coming to London. The best talent in Barcelona is coming to London. And we're going to build literally a pan-European unit. And I said, the key word was, you have to trust me on this because I'm not French. Although I have French heritage, I guess, from Basque Country, but I'm not French. I'm not German. I'm not Spanish. I'm going to be completely unbiased, but I'm going to tell you how we're going to run this so that everybody has a fair say in what we do as a European unit. And so we did that. And I said, you got to trust me. You got to trust the process. You got to trust that if we make a mistake, nobody's going to get fired. We're going to try different things and, we'll adjust as we go. But there are going to be some ground rules and we're going to all do really well together. And so they believed me, and so we went ahead and we did it. I'll never forget the first meeting, and tell me if I'm going in too deep here, but it just is something really comes back to me when you ask. I had a sales meeting where I brought all the sales and marketing people together from all the regions. And this was when we first brought some of them back into London for the central office. And we created what we had T-shirts, and it had 13 countries all around the T-shirt on the back of the T-shirt. And it was called Partners in Grow, like pig. That's what it was. Partners in Grow, the acronym. Yeah.
Maybe we should have thought through the acronym first, but that's why you don't use acronyms ever in business. Ever.
Yeah, we couldn't use that, but it was Partners in Grow.
We're going to use that acronym. No.
And everybody just gathered hand. That company, we grew, I think it was a little 180 million, making some profit, but not much, to over 300 million in 2 years revenue.
Holy cow.
And generating like 14-15% bottom line profit. Okay. We had to close warehouses. We built one big warehouse in Holland, supporting all of Eastern, Western Europe, Middle East, and so forth. And so we had to do some of these things and move something around. But the synergies that came from bringing everybody working together and trusting each other was just, off the charts. So that was the challenge. And coming back to what you were asking me about my heritage or my growing up years, that's the first time that I realized, for number one, it was the first time I had operating responsibility for international. But it made me realize that all of that moving around when I was a kid actually helped me assimilate into Europe and to figure out how to influence without alienating some of these, subsidiaries, right? With very almost confrontational cultures, between the Brits, the French, the Germans, and so forth. And there was not much trust, but we broke all that down. So Anyway, that was probably the most
Wow.
difficult one, but hugely
Yeah.
successful.
Very
And,
seasoned.
Timberland
Yeah.
stock was 10 times what it was in over 5 years. It was a 10x improvement because it was publicly traded at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. I love that you said that the influence without alienation. That was brilliant. And you are, I always think of you are the king of trust. I mean, you can build trust with absolutely anyone. And there's something about the energy that you bring to things that says, I'm going to do what's fair. This will be a win-win or nobody plays. And and I think a lot of business is about trust. And and you and I both have those childhoods where we both moved a lot. But as a kid, I think both of us would say the same thing, which is you feel like, oh, every so often we're moving and losing all our friends and learning a new language and going somewhere else. But as an adult, I've been in 5 countries in the last, 2 years, and it does have advantages. It's funny how the things that you think are, oh, so annoying as a
Yeah,
kid can often be the experiences that are really beneficial to you or to the world, to your career when you're older. We don't always realize that or acknowledge that.
at the
I
time. Yeah.
at the time, it isn't necessarily as much fun, but you grow from it, which is fantastic. I love the idea. We've been talking about you writing a book called The Magic of Trust, which I still think is a fabulous title. How is it that I know that you come in with a gravitas because of all that you've experienced, but I assume that, day one in business, way back when, you did not come in with that same gravitas. How did you build trust when you first started? And what are things that people that are business owners that need to build trust with their power partners, the people that work for them, that are believing in them and the vision and the mission that they have, or the people that, that are coming in new, maybe to a company?
Mhm.
How do you build trust rapidly? Sometimes you have to build trust. What would be like one or two secrets of finding that magic of trust instantly or quickly?
Yeah, I would say, well, the benefit I had was Black+Decker was a tremendous training ground, and I was there almost 15 years, right? And my last assignment was to launch the DeWalt brand, the yellow tools, back in the
Yeah.
early 90s. And that's gone
Everybody,
huge now today.
everybody loves those. Yeah.
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 And so, but they gave me the benefit of working both in operations and in marketing business development throughout those 15 years, and then combining it as I proceeded up the chain. A lot of responsibility as a young marketing person starting out, or a young operations person, because I was kind of zigzagging between the two. And I think what I learned is, number one is I had some very good mentors, okay, and that helped me with how to deal with situations. How do you go in my first few meetings when I started to have responsibilities for people that were much older than me, whether they were marketing or operations and stuff, and how do you get that respect and so forth? And I would say that some of the key things, and I would say this would pertain to any of the folks that you work with at all different size companies, leadership roles, Sarah, is authenticity. Being authentic helps you build trust. Okay, so if I made a mistake, it was, I was accountable for the mistake. So being very authentic, being very approachable. Okay, so that, and I honestly, asking questions and getting to know people helps you become approachable at all levels. Okay, so I think being humble as well would be another one. So authentic, being approachable, and being humble. So, one of the biggest things I've seen happen with some companies, and I was trapped into this too, both at Nautilus and Durrell, where we were growing so well, so fast, okay, after turning them around and then getting going by the third year, that it's easy to become complacent, okay, because everything's okay, yeah, this is going great, let's go do this or let's go do that. And that's one of the risks, I would say, of growing. What do you have to be careful of? Be careful not to read your own press too much, is what I would say. Nautilus, we were winning, we were the Fortune 100's fastest growing sports and lifestyle company, for 3 years right in a row. And that shareholder return, that's any way you wanted to measure it. At Durrell, it was like when we got the factory and the company turned around by the second year, the Columbus newspaper, it's called the Columbus Republic. It was a local town. It was 40,000 people and so forth. We were the third largest employer. And there was the title on the front page was "A Sleeping Giant Has Awakened." Okay. And everybody was like, "Oh, can you see the paper? Blah, blah, blah." I'm like, hey, we still got a lot of work to do. So, those are things that, authenticity, approachability, those kinds of things, but also being humble so that you remember the tough times and remember that, there's always something better you can do and more growth that is available to you if you do it right. So that's kind of what I would say, or some of the themes that I would picked up early on during my years at Black+Decker, and I just carried that forward after that.